Liam, Ava and Zoe had finally reached the top of the cliff, just as a slowly darkening sky had begun to paint over the whiteness of the clouds. From the top of the cliff they could see the entire valley. They spotted a town filled with white buildings with red roofs. An ivory clock tower was the tallest building, and announced the new hour with chimes that reverberated throughout the valley. Liam peered down, expecting to spot people wandering around the streets, but the town appeared still, as if everyone had gone to bed early. But soon, windows began to light up like tiny candles. The clock tower had its own light, the brightest of all the buildings. "Hey, Liam, want to help?" Ava called out to her cousin. Annoyance laced her voice. She and their friend Zoe were setting up camp, and they were in the middle of building the tents. "Yeah, sorry," Liam said. Went over to help the others. They built his tent next to Ava's, and then assembled Zoe's on the other side. The poles clanged as they slotted them together, piece by piece, before sliding them through the rustling canvas. When the tents were finally standing, Ava and Zoe, holding one each side, wafted out a large checkered blanket and laid it on the ground in front of the tents. They ran their hands over it, smoothing out the fabric. The wind swept by, and a shiver ran down the base of Liam's spine, up through the back of his neck. He grabbed another blanket and draped it around his shoulders like a cape. Liam felt it was surprisingly cool for this time of year, but a blanket would have to suffice. He didn't want to get up and move into the tent. Part of the fun of camping was to lie in the open air and stare up at the never-ending expanse of darkness. That was why they came up here, to sleep under the stars. They'll do this at least a few times over the summer, and they've been doing so for the past few years now. Zoe had brought a telescope so that they could get a better look at the sky this time. Despite it still being a little too early in the evening, she had already set it up and was pointing it in various directions. She received it for her birthday a few weeks earlier and had yet to properly test it out. All three of them had been eager to use the new addition to their camping trips. Ava stretched her arms up to the sky and lay down on her back. Her curls fanned out over the blanket. She pointed out a few stars, pretending to know the names of some constellations, but they were much too dim to see properly yet. Before the sky darkened completely, the three of them ate dinner, which consisted of beef jerky, sandwiches, and dried fruit. Liam liked to add the jerky to his cheese and ham sandwich, as he thought the saltiness of the crispy beef, mixed with the creamy cheese and the smoky ham, were a fun combination. Ava wrinkled her nose up when he suggested she try the concoction. Zoe took a bite, but decided to stick with eating it the more traditional way. As Liam ate, he found himself drawn back to watching the town below. He spotted the silhouettes of a small group of people. They reminded him of tiny ants as they scuttled about, but soon enough the people disappeared, probably inside their homes. As time passed, the town became cast in complete inky darkness. The lights from the windows seemed to shine even brighter, but gradually, as the town fell asleep, they burned out one by one. Liam, Ava and Zoe looked up from the blanket at the masses of blinking stars that now peppered the darkness. Barely any clouds were in sight, giving way for the stars to perform in a grand display. Like tiny diamonds that sparkled non-stop, their brilliance radiated. Liam gawked at them in immense awe. His eyes scoured the sky in every direction. Zoe had focused her telescope on one particular area and was peering through the lens. She gasped upon seeing the lustrous beauty on the other side. "I see Scorpius," she declared in a high-pitched voice. She lifted her eye from her telescope and struck a finger to the sky. "There, do you guys see it?" Liam glanced to where Zoe was pointing. He spotted the constellation's brightest star, Antares. He trailed his eyes up and down before discovering the rest of the Scorpion. "Yeah, I see it," he said, narrowing his eyes to help him focus on it. "Let me get a closer look," Ava said. She went over to the telescope and looked through it. "Wow!" she exhaled. "You can say that again," Zoe said, staring up. "Man, I'm so happy that it's such a clear night. Remember last time when it poured down rain? out of nowhere. Yeah, that was a disaster. Ava pulled back from the telescope and foraged through the bag of dried fruit. She tore a piece of apricot in half with her teeth and chewed slowly. Liam was inspired to grab some dried fruit for himself. He bit into a date, and a candy-like taste filled his mouth. He took another piece of fruit, thinking it was a slice of apple. In the darkness, but as he bit into it, he recognized the unmistakable taste of pear. It was a pleasant surprise, and he happily devoured it. He returned his attention to the sky, his eyes scanning every inch as he searched for other constellations. "I think I see Sagittarius," he remarked after a short while. Zoe looked through the telescope a little to the west of Scorpius and confirmed with a thumbs up. Liam searched for more constellations, but had trouble spotting any. There were so many stars in the sky. His eyes began to strain. He shifted his focus for a moment. As he did so, he saw some fireflies fly by. Their greenish-yellow light flickered through the air. Liam's gaze followed one as it drifted over in his direction. When he reached out his hand, the firefly landed on the tips of his fingers. Its tiny wings twitched before spreading out wide. Liam lifted his hand upward, and the creature's bottom lit up as it took flight. It dimmed again as it returned to the darkness, then disappeared into the night, as if becoming one with the stars. Liam was speechless as he watched it depart. The others hadn't noticed it landing. He hadn't wanted to alert them in case he alarmed the creature. He decided to keep those special moments to himself. Liam rested back into his blanket. He stretched out his entire body before relaxing into it, the ground beneath him. As he lay there, breathing the night air, his mind felt quiet and still. He didn't really think of anything particular. In Liam's opinion, an empty mind was a peaceful mind. He was feeling very much at peace at the moment. He heard his cousin and friend chatting to each other, but he wasn't focusing on what they were saying. Their voices sounded distant, like a low-toned radio playing in the background. He turned his head toward the moon, which hovered on the other side of the valley. It stared back at him, like the eye of a giant, its milky rays projected onto the rocky cliff, enveloping it in a silver veil. For a moment, Liam thought he saw a shooting star arcing over the moon, but he blinked, and nothing about the moon or the stars were any different. Besides, he wasn't aware of any news of a meteor shower. It would be very nice to see one, he thought. Liam had only seen a meteor shower once, and that was years ago. He remembered waking up Ava early in the morning and dragging her out into the bitter coldness of the middle of the winter, just as streams of meteors flew by. At first, she had been very grumpy that he had pulled her out of bed, but her anger had seemed to disappear instantaneously as she gazed up at the sky. Liam remembered how her complaints had fallen into complete silence and how her eyes lit up upon seeing the shower. From that moment on, she had been more happy than ever to join him as he explored his hobby. Liam scooted over the blanket until he was next to his cousin. A packet of dried fruit lay between them. They both picked a few more pieces. Zoe was looking through her telescope again. "We picked a great night to do this," she said. "We sure did," Liam agreed. "Spotting any other constellations?" Zoe asked him. "Nope. I kind of stopped looking. I've been dozing off." "I think I'm going to doze off soon," Ava yawned. "It's been a long day." She glanced over at Zoe, who was still engrossed in the telescope. "Want to sit down with us? Give me a sec," Zoe called back with a quick wave of her hand. "She clearly means an hour," Ava told Liam, rolling her eyes. I'm coming," Zoe retracted from the telescope and sat down with her friends. "What is it?" "Nothing. We just wanted you to sit with us," Ava said. "Take a break from the telescope for a while." "I suppose," Zoe shrugged, gestured her head to the sky. "Everything is so amazing up there, though." "It really is," Liam said, nodding his head. "How many stars do you think are up there?" Ava asked. "Billions, probably." Liam turned to her. "Remember how we used to try and count them from the back seat of the car when we were little?" "Yeah, I remember," Ava said. I think you drove Nana up the wall with your counting. Me? Liam said, taken aback. You would count them too? Yes, but I would count them in my head. You would count them out loud, Ava pointed out. Liam folded his arms in front of his chest and mimicked his cousin in a silly voice. She stretched out her leg and nudged him with her foot. We should play a game now. Not counting, though, Zoe piped in with a chuckle. What sort of game? Ava asked. I hadn't thought that far ahead. Zoe paused in thought for a few moments. How about... Oh, I know. Let's imagine new constellations. That sounds fun, Liam said. Ava frowned slightly. Sure, whatever. Let's see. Zoe raised her finger up to the sky and traced it along. She joined a group of stars together and carefully drawn out lines, like a children's connect the dots picture. What's the Latin word for whale? How are we supposed to know that? Liam laughed. Okay, I'll make a word up, Zoe said. Orcarus, the great whale constellation. The law is that Orcarus swam so far into the horizon, he got caught in the sky, and now lives forever with the stars. Oh, let me try, Liam said excitedly. He traced his finger in long strokes and a few smaller sweeps, forming the outline of a tree. Okay, the redwood constellation, he said, when he had finished drawing. It's so big that other constellations live within it, giving them a home. Okay, Ava, your turn. Ava let out a long, She scratched the side of her head and twisted her mouth from side to side. A few moments passed before she lifted her finger and traced it along just 3 stars. Okay, this is Fido, the dog constellation. But there are already several dog constellations, Liam interjected. Yeah, but this one's the most loyal, Ava countered. He saved hundreds of kids from a flood or something. Oh, I don't know. All 3 of them laughed. It was a silly game. They were having fun. They named a few more, but soon ran out of ideas, and their voices fell quiet. Liam closed his eyes, and even though they were shielded by the cover of his eyelids, he could still see ghosts of the stars dotted in front of them. He thought of the tree constellation he had made up. He loved the idea of hoisting himself all the way up its trunk, poking his head into the leafy top to get a closer look at the other constellations that inhabited it. He imagined that they would look like twinkling Christmas lights strewn over the branches. As his imagination roamed, intense drowsiness waved over him, and let out a loud, exaggerated yawn. This set off a chain reaction as Zoe yawned too, followed by Ava. It was getting late. They had been stargazing for a few hours now, and Liam wasn't too sure what time it was, but could tell it was well into the night. He began to drift, allowing all conscious thought to escape his head. Sleep wrapped itself around him like a comforting blanket. He suddenly felt a little shivery, so shook off the sleep to allow him to get up and fetch his sleeping bag. He zipped it all the way up and melted it into the padded fabric. Ava and Zoe followed suit, slipping into their sleeping bags, and together they lay beneath the light of the stars. Just as Liam was about to close his eyes once more, a shooting star flew past, an elegant arc. It was incredibly fast, a whizzing streak of silver. He waited to see if more would come. After a few moments, a couple more dashed over, then more after that, hurtling by in a flurry. The trio sat up, gasping at the scene. All semblance of sleep disappeared, right there as they watched the show. Liam hurried over to the telescope to get a closer look. He, Ava, and Zoe took turns looking through it. It was a wondrous sight. Liam wished the spectacle would last all night. As the sky settled down again, so did he. When he climbed back into his sleeping bag, he wondered if anyone else had been watching from the town below. He imagined a little kid dragging his family out to watch, just as he had done with Ava all those years ago. Liam felt thankful that he had gotten to share another incredible experience with his cousin, and Zoe, of course. He was sure that it was going to be a memory he would cherish forever. The end.